So I want to say thank you to Horst and the team and Alex and the whole board for inviting me here. Great place, Abu Dhabi. So, hope this is an annual thing, wink, wink. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the work items that we do in our group that I think is relevant for this group. And a lot of this has actually been done with Alex and with Sandy. I will particularly talk about the two bullets there, which is this problem of asset definitions and semantic compatibility, and also talk about digital identity. I don't think I have enough time for this layer one interop problem, which is a major issue today. The blockchains you have today, they don't talk to each other on purpose, and so we're trying to fix that. So here's the vision. As Sandy said earlier, unfortunately, the Web3 word is now considered passé. It's not hype anymore, which I think is good, because we're now hopefully over the hype, the hype curve and into this the trough of disillusionment and pain, and then the slow, very slow up. A lot of work, a lot of hard work, and I hope we're up the incline. So this is kind of our vision of what is it. When we say Web3, what do we mean? And it is the Internet of Value. And so if I have to explain this to a non-technical person, I typically say that if I want to send an asset to Horst, it should be as easy as sending an email. Okay, so when you send email today, there's a lot of stuff under the hood that happens instantaneously. DNS runs, your mail server finds each other, there's MX records all over the place. And that's taken for granted, but it's taken at least 25 years for the industry to work on that. And so that's kind of the vision in terms of the end user. The current narrative and discussions about digital assets has been so focused and driven by the blockchain community that I think it's the wrong way of looking at this problem. It needs to be looked at from the asset perspective, right? Because the value, the economic value comes from outside the network. I'll be talking about asset networks. By that I mean, blockchain networks. So what's new in this case? Well, this is desire to tokenize, and most of this talk is about tokenizing value. There's other forms of tokenization. We were involved with a number of initiatives that deal with supply chains, and particularly we work closely with the IBM folks when they were investigating how to use ledgers to track shipments of goods, shipments of vegetables, and so on. Programmability is the thing that's kind of interest to, I think, people in the finance world. How can you, attach some set of rules to a particular token so that it's handled according to what's specified in the rules? And composability is another big one. So if you, have a composite asset, how are you going to, make sure that all the pieces travel together and nothing that gets left behind, and can you decompose it? So these are pretty interesting topics. And of course, desired features, you hear this all the time. Okay, sorry, pointing in the wrong direction here. So this is a very simple model of and for those who know about centralized securities deposit, you'll recognize some of these words. So part of the problem today is that other than commodities and assets that have been sort of listed, the DCCC has a list of covered classes of assets. Other than that, we don't really have a sort of standard way to define what is an asset. So we talk about asset schemas and asset profiles. So an asset schema is a set of syntaxes in a particular language that you can use to describe your asset. It's everything. But for industry-specific usages of assets, you need a profile. So for example, if the mining sector in Australia wants to tokenize, iron ore, it needs a profile that's a subset of the available definitions and classes that's defined in the asset schema. And if a company in Brazil wants to do the same, the two profiles need to be compatible, right? So that a buyer in Brazil that buys tokenized, iron ore in Australia and vice versa will say, well, it's the same thing. It's defining ore, right? So this in the DLT space, in the blockchain space, this doesn't exist. In the existing commodities off-chain world, this is commonplace. So the next, these are all stages. The next thing that needs to happen is there needs to be some way to provide evidence that this particular physical asset has been immobilized, right? So in the old world, so you guys were around in the 60s, I think there was a point in time in the 60s where the regulations in the United States was that when you settle at the end of the day, you actually have to deliver the certificates. And at one point in the 60s, there was over 1 million in a day, and everybody said, okay, let's replace that with punch cards. And if you guys know what a punch card is, it shows your age. So then slowly all of this became electronic book entries in big mainframes. And so we've gone from immobilization to dematerialization into electronic book form. And now you have companies like Euroclear and DTCC that deals with all of this. Those are centralized entities. So part of the vision of DeFi, for those who believe in DeFi, is we'd like to break that apart and see if we can make things run better. So we need the ability for an entity who has, I have evidence that this asset is in my warehouse or is in my possession, to put this on some kind of a ledger registry system that is accessible, readable by the whole world, right? If you really want to have end-to-end deliverable, assets across the internet in Web3, this needs to happen. So it's interesting that the European Union is now ahead of the USA in defining some of these regulations for assets. So the MiCA regulation is just published in April or May in the European Union. It particularly talks about two types of tokens. The first is electronic money tokens, tokenized government cash. I'm not going to talk about that. But the more interesting one is the second one, which is the ARTs, which are asset reference tokens. So these are not NFTs, for those who know what an NFT is. This is just your plain old token with a hash of a pointer to something else on that side, right? So these relationships, these links are shown as dots. And all of this, the three columns on the left, and I think there's more actually, this is needed. This is new IT infrastructure that's needed. And this is why I'm talking to you guys here in Abu Dhabi. This is the kind of stuff that I think Abu Dhabi and ADIA Lab needs to take leadership on. Like, don't wait. Just like the EU did not wait for the good folks in Washington, D.C. to come around, and the EU said, okay, it's taken too long for the folks in D.C. to define what a digital asset is. We're going to define it, and that's the MiCA regulation. I think there's a role for this region, for Abu Dhabi to take leadership in this space. There's so many questions that are unanswered, partly because I think the crypto bros, if you guys know what that phrase means, the crypto bros are just too busy speculating. They're not really innovating anymore. Right, we have too many blockchains. Many of these blockchain players are basically burning through cash that they raised during the token raise. And my opinion is that in 3 years, half of them, there's going to be market consolidation. Half of them will be gone. Right? And I say this in meetings, and they hate me, but it's because it's the truth. They know it. I know it. Their CEO knows it. So this is one way of looking at this. So, just to make things real and a bit more fun, this is Alex is familiar with this one because I've been telling him all about the complexities of this. So this is what people call a hybrid asset. So this is a piece of artwork that was auctioned for $29 million at the end of 2021. So what it is a metal cage, taller than the guy. That's the guy there. His name is, he's an animator. His handle is Beeple, and I can't remember his actual name. Anyway, so this is a cage. It has 4 LCD screens, right? It's quite big. And the LCD screen is playing this movie, a .mpeg-4 file, over and over again. This is the sculpture. Okay, and so he sold this. Why is this interesting? He sold it via an NFT. Right, so we studied this carefully. I'm working with some colleagues in Luxembourg, trying to decipher these pieces, and that's part of a project. So those folks are part of the European Blockchain Services (EBSI) initiative, and the European Union also has this Next Generation Internet (NGI) effort, trying to, sponsor research, along these lines. So first problem, how do you identify the parts of this composite asset, right? So this guy, Mr. Beeple, can tomorrow produce the same looking cage, maybe made out of gold or maybe out of titanium, with the same, another LCD screen and the same movie, and he can sell it again. Okay, and whoever buys it, paid 29 million, is going to be cranky about that. So how do you identify all these parts? If one LCD, so let's say I buy this, I run it in my home, and then next month one of the LCD screens dies. Electronics are going to die. So do I go off and buy a new LCD screen? Did I just invalidate my product? Did I just devalue? Did I just destroy my investment? So secondly, how do you identify this instance versus the second one made out of titanium or gold? How do you identify the binding of these pieces? More interestingly, and this is kind of shocking when we discover this, if you look at the NFT for this is a piece of code, it has a URL to a server location that actually stores the movie file, the MPEG-4 file, and you can go there and you can look. You can actually download if you can do that now. Download the movie on your laptop and see this thing running. Right? It's just a movie file. The problem is the NFT points to this endpoint, this server. If the server dies, if Mr. Beeple dies, your assets just got destroyed. Why? Because you can't change the NFT. You can say, well, I'm the owner. I've downloaded a copy of the movie file. I'm just going to reissue the NFT pointing to my own server that has this file. You've just invalidated your NFT, right? So this is already broken by design. And what a lot of people don't understand is copyright. So when you buy any digital artwork, you're buying one copy. The original author retains copyright. So this guy, Mr. Beeple, can produce as many, can sell the movie, the same file over and over again, because he is the copyright owner. And this causes confusion because when Alice buys this thing, just not even this thing, just a picture, a digital image, and sells it to Bob in the secondary market, Bob thinks he has acquired the rights to reproduce multiple copies, whereas in fact, he can only hold one copy of the artwork, and Alice actually is under legal obligation to delete hers. Right? This is classic copyright. You guys got lots of legal experts. They can tell you off the bat that this is there's several issues with this problem. So, sorry, pointing the wrong way. So I'm going to skip this. And so what needs to happen? What needs to be standardized that doesn't exist today? And I think this is part of the role, I think, of ADIA Lab in this, standardizing the syntax and semantics of all of this, the schema and the profiles, making sure that there's the same or similar interpretation of these asset definitions, introducing new types of extendable classification beyond what DTCC has, right now. If you just Google DTCC asset class coverage, it's mostly, commodities and all the stuff that's typically securitized. Persistence of a lot of things. So persistence in the token numbering. There's no way for you to uniquely guarantee that your token number is not going to collide with another number in a different network. Discovery. How do I find available assets out there, right? Can't do Google on this because this is all, within blockchain. API, service interfaces. This is one of the struggles I personally. So a bit of background. So part of my role in connection science is to engage a lot of corporate partners and industry sectors. So connection science is actually members of a lot of organizations. We're a member of Linux Foundation, ETF, Trusted Computing Group, and this is where we enter the fray. Okay, we don't sit around in our ivory tower and just worry about the world. We actually go out there and try to influence the discussion with a bit of sort of sanity in this case, because there's a lot of nonsense out there. So one of the things that the industry needs to adopt is standard APIs, and the crypto bros hate standardization. The crypto bros do not like APIs. They know what APIs is, they just don't want to do it. Okay, so switching over, because I think this is also very relevant for folks here. This is work that Alex and I actually did even before COVID, I believe. So the travel rule problem. So if you guys are familiar with correspondent banking, yes, no, you guys are, but correspondent bank. So you know, I want to send money from First Bank of Abu Dhabi to my friend in Japan. So I'll go to a local bank here. They're going to send instructions to the First Bank of Abu Dhabi, and then they're going to send the instructions, a message to Bank of Japan to send the money to Sumitomo Bank in Osaka. So that's a easy two hop. So the travel rule says that, particularly for members of SWIFT, these are banks, most of the banks are, the personal identifying information about the originator and my friend in Japan, it needs to travel with the funds. That's what we call funds travel rule. So this is a problem in crypto assets. Okay, so the banking industry has been doing this for 30 years. That's why they got the SWIFT network, and they message each other, including the personal information about the person. So originator, first name, last name, address, account number, I think in some cases even passport number. Now, the challenge for the crypto exchanges, Coinbase, Binance, and so on, is that they have no legal framework, a global legal framework that will ensure that if Coinbase in New York sends asset transfer from me with my data to some exchange, in the South Pacific, that the exchange in the South Pacific is not just going to sell my data to the open market, right? So this is a consumer data privacy problem. So for those who don't know what FATF is, so FATF is this global organization that defines the common regulations and I guess policies for a global movement of funds, of money. It's based out of Vienna. Most developed nations and developing nations are in fact members. The US Treasury has a team that represents the United States at these FATF meetings. So throughout 2015, 16, and 17, a lot of the crypto exchanges argued, they sent lobby groups to Washington, D.C., they were arguing that they're not really sending money, so they should be exempt from all the regulations, particularly the Bank Secrecy Act of 1996, that the travel rule doesn't apply to them. So that was the first reasoning. Okay, and it's like, okay, well, that's a bit of a, that's disingenuous because they were transmitting value. And then they tried another strategy. They said, well, it's impossible for us to know who holds the Bitcoin keys because it's all anonymous, right? And so, okay, well, that's also, that is the problem, but, it's doable. So in response, finally, after 2 years of arguing back and forth, FATF produced this statement, and you can read it. It's Google recommendation number 15, 2018. It has 2 pages that defines who is this entity that deals with crypto assets. And they call this virtual asset service provider. So if you read very carefully, it's pretty encompassing. So basically, any legal person so on that does virtual assets or fiat, yeah, obviously. And if you transfer, so if you receive Bitcoins and you produce XRPs from Ripple, then you're covered. Yeah, the interesting thing for me is the second last bullet. If you are not really an exchange, but you're holding in custody some crypto assets, then you're covered. I mean, you have to oblige. You have to follow this. And if you happen to be a little bank that offers banking services to a crypto exchange, you're also covered, because there were all these little banks that no, we're just holding an account belonging to that little crypto exchange out of New York, and we don't know who that's all we do. No, you're also covered. So this is, I show this because this is actually quite relevant for what we're going to say next in terms of identity. So if the crypto bros are complaining, exchanges are complaining that they're concerned about the loss of privacy because they can't guarantee that the originator personal data will not be lost or leaked at the other end, and maybe there's another way to do this. So let me actually move forward 2 more slides. So there's already a standard to produce information about individuals, and it's called the X509 standard. For those who are old enough, you probably remember the X500 effort from the ISO that didn't go very far. That little sort of child of the X500 is called the X509. It's hugely successful. X509s carry public keys, and X509s are used. If you have an iPhone, keep telling people there's at least 3 of these things that Apple issued to the phone, to itself, and to the entity that signs the app store. If you're in Washington D.C. and you see these federal employees with, these, 6 badges. Each of those badges have an X509 cert just to enter the building. Some have 2. And so this is old stuff. This is 25 years old. And what we're saying is that, look, we could reuse this and use some kind of a cryptographic blinding method, or just simply erase your replacement with a random number of the identity of the subject. Okay, this already buys you. So this is one step. You need 2 steps. Secondly, you need to get, let me go forward. You need to get your legal representative to notarize this. Okay, you need 2 things. One is not enough, you need 2. So the attestation issuer could be a bank, it could be a government, it could be a credit scoring company. Essentially, it's the credit scoring company saying, subject is Thomas, credit score 500, this is the date. That's what it's saying. Now the blinding says, remove Thomas, just put a random number, and then sign the whole thing, hand it over to your lawyer, and the lawyer is going to countersign it. Okay, so digital signatures are valid in the United States since 2000. This is one of the things that President Clinton did. This is the e-signature Act. What do we get out of this? So if I provide this blinded data structure to my crypto exchange, and they send it to the other crypto exchange somewhere in Africa, say, that recipient, if they're concerned about me being terrorist or money launderer, they can look at the outer certificate and say, oh, this is issued by a law firm, countersigned by a law firm in Boston. That's the identity. That's the business. That's a LEI number. They can call up that law firm and say, hey, did you really issue this? And the law firm say yes. This can be automated, of course. And then in the case that there is legal enforcement, FinCEN or FBI or Interpol is interested in this set of transactions, they can look at the keys on the ledger, and they'll look at this data structure, and they'll arrive at the same law firm and say, okay, hey, we've got a warrant for you to show me who is the owner of this, who's the entity owning this particular subject. So what we're trying to do now is apply this to content from Gen AI. Okay, so part of the issue with Gen AI is you're feeding the transformer blocks with all this stuff that you get from the internet. In fact, there is, some of you might be following this, Adobe, Microsoft, and a couple other companies have created this content authenticity initiative. And what they want to do is for photographs, images, they want to have this tag and the whole thing signed. Right, so we're on the right track. And what they want to do is be able to account for all the input. If you have the LLM as a black box and you're feeding this input with all this data, the LLM needs to take note of those that have the tag, that have the signed logo from this initiative. So it's the same thing, except we're using this to help in asset transfer. So this is what it looks like. Bottom plane is your exchange-to-exchange deal. It could be originator going directly with the beneficiary. The originator needs to say to credit scoring company, give me an attestation and blind it, please. Okay, and then the credit scoring company will say to its attorney, can you please countersign this and act as my notary? So there's 2 things needed. So suddenly this becomes a very valuable instrument from a legal perspective, and I think it provides a short-term solution for what's happening now in the crypto space, right? This is something you could do today. Technology is 25 years old. law firms can actually make reasonable income. You can automate this, right? You don't have to have a notary person read this, and this can just be automated. Machine, you log on. Here's my blinded attestation. Can you countersign it? Can you notarize it? You get the notarized version. So I think, we're investigating this. As I said, we're trying to promote this in a number of standards organization. Just as I said, it's a short-term solution. The long-term solution is, I think, all the crypto exchanges, anyone handling digital assets, virtual assets, they need to get together and form something equivalent to SWIFT, if you guys know what SWIFT is. And because that's, we've spoken several times to the SWIFT people, and I've said to the crypto bros, if you guys don't do it, if your exchanges don't do it, then SWIFT is going to do it for you. And you can't whine and complain that, big brother is, taking my liberties away. So, no, you've had 10 years to fix this, and you're just not interested. So, Alex knows that I'm pretty blunt when I'm dealing with the crypto bros, because it's too much hype. All the things promised, it's going to help democracy. What else is going to help the poor, starving people in developing nations? All that. That hasn't happened. And that's why I'm a bit skeptical now with the crypto bros. Those are just some references. I would like to leave 5 minutes maybe for Q&A if anyone is interested. If you want to read more, Building the New Economy, Data is Capital, that was the book that Sandy was pointing to earlier. But happy to take questions. I need coffee. I think you guys need coffee too.
Hi, just got a question on why do you need the blockchain? It's just about centralization versus decentralization. The centralization has many advantages. It could be argued it's more secure.
I get this all the time. Like, why do we need blockchains? Right? This is why do we need DLTs? Why do we need Bitcoin? Right? Yes, I agree with you. This is the Web3 thing. The problem with centralization is going to be that each nation is going to have its own Euroclear. Okay, so Euroclear, if you guys know what that is, it's built through acquisition over time from the 70s. Now it's quite big, but there's going to be several of these. And the other problem is blockchains are not going to go away. The crypto bros are not going to go away. And so why not work with these guys and say, look, this is a sort of a way forward to solve some of your problems, some of the legal problems.
But how do you make sure that having the data decentralized, essentially it's a database that could be in anyone's pocket. All that information is with anyone.
Right.
And it could, if there's a way in the future where, a common term is like these quantum computers, you could then technically access that data, anyone who has access to that blockchain.
Right. So this is another project under the banner of data cooperatives. So part of the problem is that although individual citizens, particularly in Europe, they have the right to have access to copies of their data. In the United States, you can. You can go to your hospital, give me a copy of my medical data, and they'll make it so hard for you. They'll print out, 2 feet worth of paper, right? The problem is that individuals, particularly in the United States, they want to keep control over their personal data and the usage of personal data, right? And so how do you resolve this dilemma, right? I want to keep control of my personal data, yet I want to trade assets, right? And I don't trust the banks anymore, right? So how do you do this? So what if you could have a data cooperative, just like a farmer's co-op? And this is you can read more in the book. And it's the co-op that issues these attestations about me. So they can run analytics and say, oh, dear co-op, here's all my credit card transactions for the past 10 years. I downloaded it from Bank of America, keep it. And they can run through and say, the co-op can even come up with its own credit scoring mechanism and say, co-op legal entity, here's person X's, we're not going to say who X is, but this is his credit score. He can bring this to different endpoints to get loans, And if there's serious interest to give him a loan, for example, then they can go back and ask the attorney, the legal representation of the data co-op. So this is about trying to solve this conflict between personal data privacy and making this digital asset world actually, usable. Because right now there's a deadlock, right? The crypto bros, the exchanges, okay. Yeah, some of the big exchanges, I think if you go to Coinbase, they'll ask for your, social security number and all that stuff, right? But not everyone is doing this, and not every country is doing this. So that's the sort of the problem on the ground. Okay, you know where to find me if you have any more questions.